Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, Root Cause Analysis Fundamentals. This event, brought to you by Quality, is sponsored by ETQ. I'm your moderator, Daryl Sealand, Editorial Director of Quality. Thanks for joining us. Today's presenter is Tom Barlow, Strategic Solutions Engineer for ETQ. Tom has over 25 years of experience working in quality. He began his career as a quality systems manager, where he documented and implemented all aspects of a QMS that ultimately achieved ISO 9001 registration. Having caught the quality bug, Tom then consulted with numerous companies to help streamline their quality management systems, ultimately achieving compliance. Tom was drawn to ETQ almost 18 years ago when he discovered the power of ETQ Reliance. With its unparalleled configuration compatibility, he realized that ETQ Reliance was the perfect tool to automate any organization's compliance management system. Since joining ETQ in 2003, Tom has served in various sales and solutions engineering roles and has been instrumental in contributing to the organization's growth. Don't forget to submit your questions, and later in the program, our presenter will address as many as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on qualitymag.com. And now I'm excited to turn it over to today's presenter, Tom Barlow.
Thank you very much, Daryl. As you mentioned, I've been with ETQ for just over 18 years now, and prior to that, I spent my time in quality. I've actually been a member of the ASQ since 1994, helping organizations tackle quality issues and implement quality management systems. So we're very excited to have this opportunity to present root cause analysis fundamentals to you today. ETQ empowers quality champions to use quality management as a catalyst for business success by delivering ETQ Reliance NXG, the world's most flexible, powerful, and easy-to-use next-generation cloud-based QMS software. Over the past 28 years, ETQ has worked with over 600 customers across the globe in many industries. We continually leverage this broad experience to help our customers solve their quality challenges. We deliver a superior customer experience and provide our customers with all the tools they need when they need them to ensure their ongoing success. So today in our root cause analysis discussion, we're going to talk about initially what is root cause analysis, and then discuss some ineffective root cause analysis processes that can occur, what you can do to ensure an effective root cause analysis process. We'll discuss 3 essential root cause analysis tools, as well as ensuring or how to ensure a good corrective action process. But before we get started, we have a poll. We have several questions for you that we would appreciate if you would answer. And the first one is, do you use root cause analysis tools? So if you could take the next 20 or 30 seconds to respond, we would certainly appreciate that. We'll just give you a couple more seconds and then we'll move on to the responses. So far, it looks like about 75% do use root cause analysis tools. Thank you for that. So as I just mentioned, it looks like about 75% of our participants today use root cause analysis tools. With that in mind, we have another question for you. If so, which root cause analysis tools do you use currently? So once again, another 20 or so, 30 seconds or so to respond, that would be appreciated. So far, it looks like 5 Whys is the clear winner. Excellent. So thank you for that. It looks like about 63 or so % of the attendees use the 5 Whys, and we'll be interested to look at the chat and just see what other tools that you might use as well. One last question. Are you happy with the results of your root cause analysis? once again, another 20 or 30 seconds, please. It's looking pretty close to 50-50. Okay. And we thank you for that. So it looks like 53% are happy with their current root cause analysis process, and 46% are not happy with their root cause analysis process. So what we're going to do is embark on our agenda, and the first thing we'll discuss is what is root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is a method of problem solving used for identifying the root causes or faults or problems. Root cause analysis is used to identify the main cause of a problem. The root cause is typically caused by a single factor, but one or several factors may constitute the root causes of a problem. A factor is considered the root cause of a problem if removing it prevents the problem from recurring. A contributing factor is one that affects an event's outcome but is not considered the root cause. Although removing a causal factor can benefit an outcome, it does not prevent its recurrence with certainty. So now we'll look at a few steps involved in performing root cause analysis. First, you'll define the problem and document specific symptoms. Then you'll determine the duration of the problem and the severity of its impact on organizational processes. Then identify the contributing factors that may have caused the problem. Isolate the root cause using one of the root cause methodologies or tools. And then finally, develop a solution to mitigate or eliminate the root cause. Next, we'll look at some examples of ineffective root cause analysis. When can root cause analysis be less effective? It can be less effective when there are time constraints. In other words, you don't have enough time to complete the root cause analysis properly. Root cause analysis concludes that it was due to operator error. And I put this in quotes because it's one of the most commonly found root causes, but it really is kind of a cop-out. It doesn't really get to the root of the problem necessarily. Corrective actions are focused on getting everyone to follow your procedures, regardless of whether the procedures are wrong or not. Some people think that we need to just get everyone to follow their procedures, which sort of ties into the operator error discussion. Root cause analysis is performed by people chosen only because they have enough time to do them. In other words, you have to have the right qualified people in the room to make decisions and be able to impact the processes to be involved in the root cause. It can't be done quickly, and it shouldn't be done by the wrong people. And then finally, if top management doesn't understand the purpose of the corrective action process or the root cause process, it'll be difficult to get traction on root cause analysis within your organization. So what are the most common root cause analysis mistakes? Once again, done too quickly to be effective. The relevant workflow is rarely reviewed to determine the cause. So you have to look at the overall process holistically to sometimes determine the cause. If the implementation is weak, it doesn't really change anything. No implementation was done, or at least ineffectively. And there's lack of follow-up or verification of effectiveness. Sometimes people go through the process of root cause analysis kind of as eyewash. They document it. They sort of make some changes, but they never go back and verify that it was effective. A poorly executed root cause analysis process can be caused by a lack of effective training or a punitive culture. An example of that would be finger pointing in your organization, which can cause people to hide problems and or fudge results. It'll only cause your organization to lose money, but it will also negatively impact morale. So there's money lost oftentimes when there's a problem, and of course it'll cause morale issues over time if you continually have problems. In addition to not keeping the problem from recurring, it can actually make things worse. So an example of that of a poorly done root cause would be the result is to retrain the operator, which leads to corrective action, the corrective action that's involved in retraining the operator. But if the training didn't work the first time, why would it work the second and third and any other subsequent times? which also can lead to a reduction in morale. If employees feel like they're constantly being, sort of beat up on for operator error or not following the process correctly, this can ultimately lead to morale issues within the organization. So now that we've discussed the ineffective root cause analysis, let's talk about how we can ensure an effective root cause analysis process. An effective root cause analysis process will result in corrective actions that prevent recurrence. You can review the workflow to identify weaknesses in the process. You can also review past corrective action results to identify focus areas. And the focus should be on the effectiveness of the root cause analysis process, not just getting the nonconformance closed as quickly as possible. Once again, it's not just a time issue, it's really more about the effectiveness of the root cause analysis, which ultimately leads to an effective corrective action. When making improvements, you want to let performance results validate the effectiveness of corrective action. Nonconformances should be seen as nuggets of gold, where they actually give you an opportunity to improve your QMS. Each time you have a nonconformance, it's a great opportunity to identify the causes of the problem and then permanently fix the problem. You should also assess upstream and downstream effects using the workflow, because changing something upstream could negatively impact something downstream in your process. So the entire process should be evaluated, especially when making a change further upstream in a specific process. You should let these metrics help you prioritize which issues to focus on. So for example, is it a customer-facing issue? Is it something that will affect customer perception? If that's the case, it probably should be prioritized above other issues that are more considered internal issues. So now that we've looked at ineffective root cause analysis and ensuring an effective root cause analysis process, let's talk about some essential root cause analysis tools. These are the three most common ones that we're going to be discussing today, and those were part of the poll that we appreciate your response on. The fishbone diagram is the first that we're going to be discussing, which was created by Karo Ishigawa, so it's also known as an Ishigawa diagram. He created it way back in 1968 to help teams determine the potential root causes of a problem. Once again, it gets a name from the layout, and the problem is listed on the right side, which represents the head of the fish, and the 6 potential categories or areas of failure in this case are branching out like fish bones. This method is especially useful for determining cause and effect within complex problems. So there are 4 steps involved in the fishbone process. You would first identify the problem. You would then ask questions such as, what are the people-related causes of the problem? Are there any standardization or measurement issues related to this problem? Did environmental conditions such as temperature or pressure contribute to the problem? And once you ask those questions, you would then drill down further. For example, why did the sudden rise in temperature occur? Finally, you would then analyze it to determine the root cause. While the 6 general categories listed in this slide are most frequently used in manufacturing, other problems in other industries may require different categories. Marketing organizations sometimes use the 7 Ps approach, or product, price, place, promotion, people, positioning, and packaging. So you can really determine the best categories for your own situation. Because it's a highly visual tool, the fishbone diagram is easy to understand, and it helps people identify and prioritize problems and solutions. So next, we actually have an example of a fishbone issue. So we have a problem that might occur, such as bad burgers, like this. So you can see that we have different categories that are defined here, and each of these is going to ultimately branch out where you can start identifying the cause. So the machines might be storage and cooking, and what could cause storage and cooking? Maybe poor hygiene or poor maintenance. So this allows you to build and continually branch out as far as you need to be able to help identify the root cause of the problem. And for time, I'm not going to walk through every single one of these, but I'll just pop the rest of this up as an example. And there are many examples available of this on the web that you can search for to provide additional information for as well. So ultimately, the goal is to get to the ultimate cause of the problem. You could combine this with evaluating the process or interviewing employees or other things that are involved in this to get to the ultimate root cause of the problem. The next one is the 5 Whys, which was developed by Sakichi Toyoda, the founder of Toyota Industries, to move beyond the symptoms of the root cause of a problem. It can be used for troubleshooting, quality improvement, and solving problems of typically moderate complexity. So this is an example of the 5 whys, and over 50% of us, I think 63% of us in this group, indicate that this is the most common tool that you use. You would start with a problem statement and then start asking why, because this, because this, because this. As many steps as you need. We call it the 5 whys, but it could be less than that or more than that as needed to ultimately get to the root cause of the problem. So there are 5 steps in the 5 whys process as well. The first thing is you would assemble a team that is familiar with the problem or the process that needs to be fixed. You would then define the problem with a clear problem statement, such as customer X received products that don't meet their specifications. You would then ask why. When you're asking why, the replies must be factual, backed by data, focused on process or symptom errors. The team should then determine whether the problem or failure would still occur if the issue identified in the answer was fixed. If the answer was yes, then ask why again. If the answer is no, you've identified the root cause. And that's why I mentioned, even though it's called the 5 whys, it may be more or less than that in coming to the final root cause. Also note that you may not need to ask why 5 times as well. So I just mentioned that. You could then develop a corrective action based on the root cause or causes that you identified, and then finally monitor and measure the results of the corrective action to validate their effectiveness. So this is a quick example of a 5 why, where we had a problem where the manufacturer receives 1,500 complaints worldwide of customers receiving empty vials of product solution. So they would start asking why, because it is leaking vials, for example. Why is it leaking vials? Because the vial cap is loose. Why is the vial cap loose? Because the torque machine is out of alignment. Why is it out of alignment? Because there's no process or set schedules for maintenance on this product line. And why is that? Because the maintenance procedure is out of date. So this is an example of a 5 why process to drill down to the ultimate root cause by asking a number of questions which ultimately lead to the root cause. The next we're going to discuss is the Pareto chart. It was named for Vilfredo Pareto, the father of the 80-20 rule. It indicates where to focus efforts to achieve the greatest improvement. It combines both a bar chart with a line graph, and the idea is to help prioritize the most important issue among many and for analyzing broad causes. There are 4 steps in this process. The first is to decide which categories and measurements are appropriate for the issues. Suggestions include things like frequency, quantity, and cost, as an example. Determine the time frame to chart, such as 1 week, 1 sales cycle, or 1 month. You would then collect and assemble the data and total up the measurements for each category. Then draw and label bars along the horizontal axis in descending order and mark percentages along the vertical axis. And then finally calculate and plot cumulative counts and connect them with the line. So the dot above the second bar should be the sum of the first and second bars, etc., based on the cumulative addition of those. And the dot above the third bar is the sum of the first, second, and third. And you would continue until the dot represents 100%. So this shows some examples of how to do that. You would literally collect your data, the frequency based on a certain category that you choose to evaluate. And then you would draw the lines in bars in descending order. And then you would finally draw the line on top with the cumulative result. Also, this is good when you have a large number of categories because the Pareto chart typically limits it to the first 5, 7, 10 or so categories so that all of the very, very small occurrences don't really factor into the overall Pareto analysis. So it helps you kind of prioritize the issues and allow the issues to sort of float to the top when you're doing your Pareto analysis. So as we just mentioned, the Pareto chart has multiple uses in quality improvement processes. It can be used in the early stages to help teams identify which business problems are generating the most losses or complaints in order to focus resources on high return quality initiatives. It can also be used to concentrate efforts in a large multifaceted problem with multiple causes. So for example, if shipping delays are creating problems in multiple areas or the business a Pareto chart can help pinpoint which root causes have the greatest impact. So now that we've evaluated the 3 most common root cause tools, we can now look at how to ensure a good quality management process. So the first thing is you want to use proven tools for root cause analysis that we discussed here to improve quality in a structured and data-driven manner. You want to review the workflow to determine if there are any potential risks from changing the process, review corrective action results for effectiveness, and determine ways to improve the effectiveness of the overall root cause analysis process. If performed effectively, root cause analysis can help your organization build resiliency, innovation, efficiency, and ultimately it can also improve morale because you're really getting to the root cause of problems, not just saying that it was employee error or training that was needed for specific employees. I'm just going to take a moment or two to introduce ETQ Reliance, which is our tool. It's actually a web-based, workflow-based business process tool that automates all aspects of quality systems management. One of the applications on our platform is the corrective action process. So this is an example of a nonconformance that launched a corrective action in our system. It has different steps in the process. So one of the steps, of course, in the root cause analysis, as we discussed, is identifying the problem. So our system will allow you to clearly identify the problem as well as several other pieces of information. Once the problem is identified, there's a step in the process for root cause analysis, and we actually have what's called the root cause analysis toolkit that allows you to leverage the tools that we provide for the three methods we just discussed in the process of conducting your root cause analysis. It can be stored here as objective evidence as well as ultimately help you drive and determine the root cause of the problem. Once you identify the root cause, you can then propose an action plan. So you can see that we have three different actions that are defined here. And for each action, you can define things like who is responsible, when is it due, what's the action, does somebody else have to verify that it's done? And what our system does is it uses very powerful workflow functionality once that plan gets approved and moved to an implementation step of the process to automatically trigger child records with assignments, automatically sending assignment emails to track the status of each individual action. And from a closed loop quality perspective, not only do we have the ability to assign actions, which are linked here, so that's a link to an individual action for one of the three actions that came from this action plan, but we also have the ability to track objective evidence within our system as well. So oftentimes when you look at a closed loop quality management system, the challenge is that you have breaks in the chain between the issue, the corrective action, the actions that are being taken, and the ultimate modifications that have to take place or objective evidence of what you did. So in this case, this is an example of a link from the action that says we had to review and revise documents to the actual document in our document control application, which is also part of our platform, to allow you to track which document or documents were actually modified as a result of that root cause. And this is an example of a document. It's been revised to Rev 2, and this is going to go back through the review and approval workflow as related to the root cause and the corrective action that was identified. And that is the presentation that I had prepared for today. And I thank you very much. I believe it's now time for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Tom. Yes, as promised, we're going to take some time to see if we can answer some questions that have come in throughout the presentation. So if you do have a question for Tom, I would encourage you to get that into the Q&A chat box now. So Tom, our first question comes from Ken. He says, can you speak to investigational bias as it applies to root cause analysis?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because just like anything, it always involves, politics and people. So you want to make sure that you have people that are not necessarily part of the process as well involved in the analysis of root cause. So you want to try to get some objective feedback on people that are not going to be influenced by the possibility that the error was caused by them or a process. You want to try to be as objective as possible in your root cause analysis.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Bill. He asks, does the ETQ system evaluate the effectiveness of the CA action?
Yes, it does. There's a step in the process that I didn't discuss in several of the screenshots that I showed, where there is a verification of effectiveness step in the process, and that could be open for months. So as you, let's say, generate some data on the correction of the problem, you could then be reminded by the system automatically to conduct your verification of effectiveness and document that verification of effectiveness.
Okay. Next question is from, I believe it's Fiza. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but Fiza asked, what if we end up with 2 root causes in a 5Y method?
That's very possible. And if that does occur, you can actually take 2 corrective actions independently of each other to address each of the root causes.
Okay. Next question is from Caesar. How can best analyze a supplier corrective action and as a customer where you cannot visit?
Well, especially since COVID-19 hit, there are a lot of things that have been happening remotely. So you can certainly do remote surveillance audits, remote interviews. You can look at data from your supplier. There are many different ways that you can analyze supplier performance and quality. Just as a coincidence, ETQ Reliance happens to have a whole supply chain quality application set that is dedicated just to that, and it allows you to analyze your information that comes from different sources.
Okay. Next question is, what kind of reports can you get from the software?
Well, the beauty of data is that it's being captured automatically. And as you increase the number of records in a system with categories that you define in the system, you can do analysis. And we have a tool called ETQ Insights that does advanced analytics of your quality data to allow you to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in your QMS and make better business decisions faster.
Okay. Our next question is from Rodrigo. Yes, is there a way to evaluate in advance the action's effectiveness?
Well, you could look at past corrective actions and look for similar actions that you've identified and determine if those were effective, which could then essentially give you a sort of a forecast as to whether your new actions for this a similar issue would also be effective.
Okay. Next question. What do you do if you can't complete your RCA, especially when you have other departments that don't or won't cooperate with the quality team?
And that's an excellent question. And this kind of gets back to the whole people side, the politics side of things. One of the things that I mentioned that you really need for an effective QMS is to have top management commitment. So the 5 things that I mentioned for an ineffective RCA, the last one was when you don't have top management commitment. So you really do need to have commitment from upper management to really understand the value of the process. And you can often do this by tying it back to dollars and cents. What's the return on investment on the changes that you're making? What's being lost as a result of the problem in the first place? So you really have to speak the language of upper managers to get them to really understand the value of the process.
Indeed. And that is just about all the time we have for questions today. If we did not get to answer your question here live, we will do our best to get you answers offline. But please join me in thanking Tom for his presentation, as well as our sponsor, ETQ. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the Email Us button on the console. Please visit webinars.qualitymag.com for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time and hope you found this webinar to be a valuable experience. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.